When do expensive gifts turn into a real problem? I'm Laurie March, project manager and problem solver, and this is True Home Confessions, brought to you by Renewal by Andersen. Let's listen.
Hi, I'm Marina. My confession is that my mom won't stop buying me clothes that I don't want. It's driving me kind of insane. I don't like to have too much clothing, honestly, and it's exhausting finding space for it in my small apartment. My mom, on the other hand, is convinced that I need a lot more. She just refuses to understand that I don't want clothes as gifts. She thinks my style is too casual, and if she gives me enough fancy clothes, I'll change who I am. Her gifts really make me feel stressed because I don't know what to do with them. I don't feel comfortable in them. It makes me feel guilty because they're expensive, and I feel bad getting rid of them. The thing is, I'm a minimalist, and I've gone to a lot of trouble to make my small apartment closet work for me. It gets really chaotic really fast, and I've spent the last few years streamlining my life down to what feels like it works for me. I've been building and editing my own capsule wardrobe. No matter how many times I tell her that, my mom still has something for me every time I see her. It feels like it satisfies something in her, when she shops for me. What can I do?
As you just heard, every episode we field an anonymous confession about the crazy things going on in your homes. From real estate regrets to neighbor drama and fights with your spouse. Next up, I bring on a guest, a friend of the show, so we can test out the value of friendly advice. Afterward, I'm bringing you an expert who's going to solve our caller's sticky situation. And then they'll let us know if our friends are really qualified to solve our toughest problems at home. Today's friend of the show, Deanna Cheng, is the Montage Queen and co-creator of the Substack, How to Be Less Old, which I subscribe to, and so should you. You're hip to the youth.
I am trying to be hip to the youth, whether I am or not. It's a constant journey. It's an ever-changing landscape, and I am on the ride.
I feel like Marina sounded young.
Yes.
So I'm feeling like we're going to lean on your hip to the youth energy here, Deanna. What did you get from that?
I mean, first of all, Poshmark. Start selling that shizz as soon as possible. Let's bring some money in. Let's start making that our side hustle. But ultimately, this girl's not feeling seen, which is always the worst feeling in the world.
Yep.
Is especially in a parent-child relationship, to feel like, gosh, you don't get me.
Yep.
You don't see me. My feelings are irrelevant to you. You are more concerned about yourself and your experience than mine. It's a lot.
Yeah.
It's bad.
But I did catch at the end where she said, I feel guilty. Mm-hmm. I'm wondering if her mom is checking up on if she still has the stuff.
I think her mom is checking up on if she still has the stuff, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen this in action, actually. Her mom is trying to make her into the vision that she has for her, that she has probably before she was born. She saw her daughter looking a certain way, moving in the world a certain way, and that's not who she is.
That is a long-ass vision.
It's a very long vision. And she would do to switch it up and see her clearly.
This feels like a problem for someone who has moved out recently,
right?
Younger. Mm-hmm. She has a small apartment. I mean, we know that the world is so expensive right now. Everything is so expensive. And so, having your autonomy, having your own apartment, it's thrilling when you finally can pull it off, have your own space if you can afford it. And then to have somebody sort of messing with your small space, with giving you stuff that they expect you to house.
Right.
And not sell.
What kind of brands, like what level do you think we're at? Do you think we're at like a Louis Vuitton? Are we at like an Ann Taylor? Are we at Banana Republic?
I got a vibe that they're wealthy.
Okay.
I feel like the person who wants their child to be wealthy looking is generally wealthy.
Yeah.
So she said her mom thinks she dresses too casual and wants her to dress up more. That feels like a more wealthy people vibe.
It's also a generational thing for sure. Is like, I don't know what this girl does for work, but she probably doesn't have to get dressed in the same way that her mom either had to get dressed for work or saw people getting dressed up. So she has this image of what, like, you can work in Silicon Valley in jeans and a t-shirt and be a trillionaire. So things are not the same.
I feel like if you're a trillionaire, you're probably not going to work.
Yeah, well, there's that. But
maybe just like a gad millionaire.
Right. I'm like, I want to protect this capsule wardrobe.
Tell me what your understanding of a capsule wardrobe is.
It's a handful of curated pieces that are good quality, in my opinion, if I'm creating my capsule. They're all going to be pieces that are going to take me through several years and beyond, and they're going to speak to each other. So I can kind of pull any shirt, trouser, shoe, and most likely they can go together. So that's like what I'm thinking is just, it's not 7 pairs of jeans, it's 2 good pairs of jeans, a couple different shirts, 1 great jacket. You know what I mean? It's just a nice streamlined wardrobe.
And it could be any style. I feel like you can do a capsule in literally any style.
True.
You could be super into goth. You could be into cottagecore, like my little sister. Like it could be any kind of capsule.
Okay, I do need to talk to your sister because I need more cottagecore.
So perhaps her capsule has nothing to do with what her mom thinks it should. Like maybe she's into cottagecore.
That's a different journey. Marina, why didn't you tell us that? If you're into cottagecore.
I need you to call back in, Marina, and tell us what the style is. And Deanna wants to know what level of things your mom is trying to buy you. So to your point, now that you know all of the youths, there could be 100 different ways that her wardrobe doesn't work for her mom.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder, too, if this is like a shopping addiction issue.
Ooh, great question.
Like she was talking toward the end there about how it sounded like it made her mom feel good when she did this shopping for her, and it did something for her mom that has nothing to do with Marina.
Yeah, I'm warming up to her mom right now. Okay. I am warming up to her mom because now I'm also like, this may be a way. Marina's moved out. She's on her own. She's living in the big city and she wants to connect to her.
Yeah.
And that's a way for her mom to be able to still mother her and connect and have like think about her and pick things up for her. So, she's having a hard time with Marina out of the house. And this is her way of self-soothing.
Interesting.
Which is fair.
Okay.
But she does have to stop. She does have to figure out a new way to do that.
Like, I kind of want her mom to just realize that that's not Marina's style and to hear her and go buy the fancy leather vest that goes with her cottagecore outfit.
Right.
Like, you want to elevate something, elevate what Marina actually wants.
I am very concerned that Marina has not communicated this frustration to her mother. I think she's like stacking these things up and it's taking up all her space. And she's like now about to be engulfed by all these fancy clothes that she's never wearing. But I don't know that she's had the conversation with her mom. She's hinted.
Yeah. Like maybe she's being passive about it or doesn't feel comfortable or feels like steamrolled or something.
A little bit.
I feel like you just gave me this vision of a stack of clothing in corners. I know for a fact that you have had one of the smallest apartments I've ever seen.
This is a fact.
Because I made it over with you.
Wow. When we worked together back in the day.
Yeah. It's been a minute. But it's really hard when you have... How many square feet was that place? Do you remember?
900.
900.
Does that make sense? Or 300? Which one makes more sense? I have those 2 numbers in my head. Is 300 possible?
I'm not including the kitchen, I think.
Okay. It was a studio.
No. I think you're right, actually. It was so little. I think it was probably more like 400.
When I don't even remember, I think you kind of were doing some planning before you let me know, like,
Yes.
hey, we're thinking of doing.
Yes.
So I directed.
We really kept you out of your space.
You did. And that was amazing because you wanted me to have the experience. We talked about how would this space be super functional,
Right.
but the final details and the styling, you let me experience it as a regular person experiencing like someone who would come into a makeover show. And that was, it was amazing. I cried.
You really have to fight so hard for every inch when you have a small space. And I'm just thinking about, like, we took your closet door off. We put your bed in the closet.
Yep.
Like leveraging every inch of the vertical space.
Yes.
So I'm imagining Marina with her tiny closet. Sounded
She's
like
gotta
a tiny.
go vertical.
Yeah. I could see how you could really build up some resentment if there is a stack of stuff building up somewhere in a place that you don't have room for. But you feel uncomfortable for whatever reason about selling it. Maybe she did it before and her mom called her on it and was like, oh, that outfit would look perfect with that jacket I bought you. Where is it?
Right.
And she had to tell her.
There's something about it being expensive that is really hard.
I wonder if it's because you're looking at it and you see the value.
Right.
Or like, you know that your mom spent the money and you asked her not to.
Right.
So your mom has lost the money. There could be $1,000 sitting there in a stack. And you're like, Mom, you wasted $1,000.
Absolutely.
That I imagine Marina would have liked to have had for her cottagecore picnic.
Or a dinner.
Pay off her credit card.
Yeah, there's a million things.
Pay down her college. Who knows? Whatever.
Exactly. It's just.
But like somehow that pressure from her mom to not sell it is, I feel like that might be the rub.
Mm-hmm.
Because if she gave you expensive stuff and it was yours to do with what you wanted, freedom, of course you'd have a Poshmark account immediately.
Right.
Mom, I'm not going to wear it. Oh my God. You know I'm going to have to list this one.
Take back the night. Sit Mama down.
Take back the night.
She has to either snip the cards or just say, this is starting to feel insulting and let's figure out a plan. She's okay. I'm striking insulting, but like, let's figure out a plan where we both feel good.
Yeah.
Because when you give me something, I want to feel good about it.
Ooh, that's good.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
I think she just needs to say, like, how about let's go to a Michelin star dinner.
Ooh, fun.
Okay. Let's take a trip.
Oh, experience.
Let's have a nice experience together.
That could be a nice redirect. Mom, give me some culture instead of clothing.
Right.
I'm really looking forward to our expert coming in next and explaining to us everything that we missed, because I feel like we went on a ride. I feel like we told Marina who she was, which is perhaps not who she actually was.
Yes.
We do, that is part of this when we have a call in or an email in. You really can't get the full details. So we do kind of go off on a tiny tangent, which is really fun. And before I forget, if you want to call or email your own confession, the phone number is 323-716-2107 or truehomeconfessions@gmail.com. If you send one in and it's emailed, I have somebody from my improv team who can read it for you, so you don't even have to use your own voice. Options.
Love an option.
Options. I'm so glad you came today.
This was so much fun, Marina. Let's all get a drink.
Bring the clothes for Deanna.
Yeah, right. Like, let's move some merch.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lori.
Friends, I have a confession. We own a beautiful 1927 Spanish-style home. And when it rained, I kid you not, I used to have to run around the house and put towels under the windowsills to collect all the water that poured in. It was bananas. I waited for years to replace the old wood windows because I was afraid the new ones wouldn't match the authentic style of my home. When I couldn't put it off any longer, I worked with Renewal by Andersen, and they put all my nitpicky fears at ease. When I work with a brand, I'm big on real relationships. You are only going to hear from companies that I have vetted myself. And I can tell you, the people at Renewal by Andersen are the best. I'm not just saying that because I'm a brand ambassador. I truly love this brand. If you need new windows and doors, here's a little offer for you. Buy one window or door and get one 40% off, plus an additional $200 off your entire purchase when you buy 4 or more. Special financing is available. Are you in? Give Renewal by Andersen a call at 844-290-2458. Back to the show. This week's expert is none other than advice columnist for The Atlantic, co-host of the extremely popular iHeartRadio podcast, Dear Therapists, New York Times best-selling author of Maybe You Should Talk to Someone. It's Lori Gottlieb. Hello.
Hello. So great to be here.
I know this is a little bit of a longer one, but Deanna Cheng had a lot to say. She's a dear friend of mine, and I could listen to her talk all day. One thing she said was that to her, it sounded like Marina wasn't feeling seen, that her feelings seemed irrelevant to her mom, and her mom was more concerned with herself and the vision that she had for Marina than sort of actual Marina, who doesn't really like the clothing. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I thought she had so many good points, but I think at the end of the day, it comes down to just setting a boundary. And there was a lot of talk about making sure the mother felt comfortable and making sure that the mother didn't feel insulted, as opposed to just setting a kind boundary. And the big misconception that people have about boundaries is they think, I'm going to request that you, mom, in this case, do something different. And if you don't, you're not respecting my boundary and the boundary has failed. The problem with that thinking is that the boundary somehow relies on the other person doing what you requested. A boundary, in fact, a good, healthy boundary is a boundary you have with yourself, that I'm going to make this request. And if this person doesn't do what I ask, here's what I am going to do. I am going to hold a boundary with myself. So an example outside of this might be, Mom, if you criticize my appearance, that makes it hard to enjoy being with you. So if you criticize my appearance from now on, I'm going to end the call. That's what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And we'll talk another time. And then you have to be consistent. You have to end the call every time. It doesn't mean like slamming the phone down at all. It means, hey, Mom, remember that thing about criticizing me? Let's talk another time because I really want to have a nice conversation with you. And if you do it every single time, your mom has no choice but to either change her behavior if she wants to continue to be on the phone with you or have a visit with you, or she's just not going to be able to talk with you because you're going to end the interaction every single time. Same with like someone who, like your partner, starts to raise their voice in an argument or a disagreement. If you yell, if you raise your voice, I'm going to end the conversation and we'll come back maybe in 15 minutes and we'll talk about it again. So if you do it every single time, they realize they really have no choice if they want to be in some kind of interaction with you. So in this case, with the clothes, first of all, I just want to say a lot of people listening might think, well, how lucky she is that her mom is buying all these beautiful clothes for her. This is truly a problem. So let's not downplay. Let's not go into that hierarchy of pain that we tend to go into and remove all judgment from this, because the fact is that what the mom is doing is incredibly controlling and disrespectful. She's basically saying to her daughter, I want you to be other than what you are. And what you are is not acceptable to me. So I am going to help you become the person that I think you should be. Well, that completely invalidates the person that she is and the person that she's happy being. So it's basically saying every time she does this, I don't approve of you. I don't accept you for who you are.
Yeah. Ooh.
That's a really hurtful message to get from your parent.
Yeah.
You want your parent to say, I delight in you. I love who you are. You can be totally different from me, and I love the person that you are. So there's no space for Marina to be who she is. So it's not just my mom is doing this annoying thing. It's right. My mom is giving me a message about my own personhood.
I think you nailed the thing about mom sort of negating who she actually is. And if I'm thinking back to Deanna's advice too, she was also a little worried that maybe Marina was being a little too passive or too subtle. Like maybe she hadn't done the boundary line. And Maybe she didn't feel comfortable drawing that line. I have some ideas on why she might not have felt comfortable on that. We're going to talk about in a little bit. Deanna also said, interestingly enough, to her, the fact that it was expensive made it feel worse. As a minimalist, perhaps Marina would have liked to have had an experience instead, or a fancy dinner, or maybe paid off her credit card with that money, or gone on a trip or something together, something else that meant something to her with that cash. And instead of clothing that isn't her style, she's sitting on this pile of clothes in her tiny apartment that her mom has an expectation that she's keeping. So in my brain, I kind of felt like this was some relatively solid advice. So we always ask here on this show, is Deanna's advice friendly advice that we should be taking? Did she get it right?
I think she got the dynamics right. I don't think she got the solution right. Okay. So the solution should be setting the boundary and keeping it every single time with yourself. So the boundary might look like this. Marina could say to her mom, Mom, I so appreciate that you care about me. And I think you have beautiful taste for you, but you and I have different ideas about what we like to wear. I would love it if you want to give me a gift and show your love that way, that you ask me if it's something that I want, because then I can truly enjoy it. But the clothes that you give me, as I've mentioned before, are just not something that I want to wear. So from now on, if you buy me a gift without asking me if it's something that I want, I'm just not going to accept the gift, because I just don't want to waste your money, and I don't want to have these things sitting around that I will never use. And it also makes me feel like you aren't really giving me something that you care about whether I want it.
Yeah, that's a doozy right there.
So, right. But then the holding of the boundary is, so Mom, I love you so much. And I know you care about me. And the way to care about me is to ask me what it is that I would like. And I will happily tell you. And then I will feel so grateful for what you give me. And then if the mom does give her something, she can it's a simple reminder. She doesn't have to go through the whole speech again. She just says, Mom, as a reminder, I'm just not going to accept gifts from you, even though they're well-intentioned, that you haven't asked if it's something that I want. And let the mom have her reaction. So the boundary with yourself is, I'm not going to appease mom. I'm not going to make mom feel better about this. What I'm doing is kind. And what I'm doing is actually healthy for our relationship. So all she does is repeat that one sentence. Mom, I so appreciate that you want to do something that makes me happy. As a reminder, the thing that makes me happy is asking me what I want. And I'm just not going to accept this. But thank you for thinking of me.
That feels really solid. As a young adult, when I first moved out of my house, it felt so important to me to make the space that I was in feel really my own. I think that this is kind of a natural stepping away from our parents, right? As we leave the house, their control and influence over our environment and our choices, it should really wane, right? Like we're moving forward as adults. And sometimes this transition has a lot of friction for people, whether it's sort of parents that are hanging on too tight, or maybe there's some dependency there because your parent is still paying a bill here and there, or helping to support you in some way, which sometimes makes your parents feel like they have a right to tell you how to live. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that's so true. That's really common. And I think that it comes with these unspoken strings. And that's the issue, is that they're unspoken. So you think, oh, my parents being really generous and they're helping me pay my rent as I'm getting my feet on the ground here, as I'm launching into my young adulthood. And it turns out that they think, well, I'm paying your rent, so I have a say in all of these different aspects of your life. I think those things need to be talked about when your parent offers to pay part of the rent, or however they're helping you, to say, hey, this is so generous. I really appreciate this. I just want to be clear about what this means. And if you have those conversations in advance, then you're not going to have that kind of conflict later. So your parent has a heads up.
I wonder how you say that, though. I'm sort of picturing, I'm getting ready to move out. My mom's going to pay half the rent. What a blessing. Maybe I have a sense that my mom is going to want to, she's really into country decorating or something. And I feel like she's been saving up a bunch of furniture pieces in her house that could be my next pieces. And how do you suggest somebody who kind of sees this fight coming get in front of that?
I think you start with the appreciation. I really appreciate this. This means so much. It allows me to take the time to figure out what job I'm going to get and help me explore. At the same time, I've always envisioned moving into my own place. And as I try to figure out all of these other parts of my life, the professional, the relationships, trying to figure out what my place will be like that feels like mine. And I would love your support in this. I understand that you're helping me to have this kind of place, but it's really important to me to be able to decorate it in the way that feels good to me as I start exploring this side of myself.
I love that. One thing that I heard in Marina was minimalism. And I actually think that is a huge trend lately in people, because when your space is smaller, every little piece is something that you have to pick up and put away and clean and dust around. So if you're first moving out, suddenly you have a lot more responsibilities and things within your home that you are responsible for taking care of. So I get it that Marina is a minimalist. She wants a minimal wardrobe. She has a capsule wardrobe, which really, in my opinion, is a very powerful way of only having what you need. And I think it reduces a ton of anxiety in people when you have less stuff and everything you have is something you like. What are your thoughts on minimalism in general as a trend?
I can see why it's a trend, because I think for a lot of people, it reduces stress. It just makes life easier. So they don't have more to think about. They have less responsibility. Even getting dressed in the morning, as we're talking about this. Think about like Steve Jobs, who always wore the same outfit every day. I'm not suggesting that Marina do this, but the idea that there's so many decisions that we have to make in the course of a day just by waking up, that if you have fewer decisions and you know that everything in your closet is something you like and something that will coordinate because you've got this capsule wardrobe, it just reduces your stress at the beginning of the day, just to start off your day. So when you have to look at all these things that you don't even like, and they're taking up space in your closet that you don't even have enough room for the things that you like in, that just creates stress right off the bat to start your day. And then it brings up, my mother doesn't see me. Look at how she's, you have to there's emotional value attached to these things that you don't want to have in your house. And I think the agency that people have in proactively choosing what goes in and what doesn't go in to your living space is so powerful. So the minimalist thing, I think, is people sort of taking control again and saying, I get to choose my environment, and I want my environment to be one of ease.
I'm feeling too like this is possibly a little bit of a generational thing too, where parents who were used to having to go into the workplace and look a certain way, or remembering a way that they dressed when they were growing up, and potentially looking around, and I see just a massive influx of people who care about sustainable clothing, getting rid of fast fashion, thrifting, people who are being a little more conscious about what they wear, and kids enjoying different styles of clothing that, 70s, 80s, another time, which potentially to the parents, they might feel like it looks silly because they're like, well, why would you dress like that when you could dress like today? And so I'm just wondering if this conversation is really prevalent right now because of so many kids exploring historical styles of clothing lately.
Yeah, I think there's always been that generational difference, but I think what's different now is that the culture overall has changed, especially in the professional world. So it used to be that no matter how many cultural differences you had, there was still an expectation that when you went to work, you looked a certain way. And now it's all over the map. And people are wanting to be comfortable at work because they do their best when they're comfortable. We are talking about a generation that cares about sustainable clothing, that cares about this idea of being authentic. And so maybe the kind of clothes that people used to wear to work didn't feel authentic to who they are. And people expressing their identity. What do we do when we design our homes? What do we put in our homes? And of course, what we put on our bodies. And I think that might be a generational difference between Marina and her mom, that her mom probably doesn't understand that and probably has some very rigid ideas about what is proper and what is appropriate. And she's feeling like her daughter, quote unquote, has potential to show herself, to present herself in a certain way, not realizing how important it is for her daughter to present herself in a way that feels good to her and is also generationally very appropriate.
I feel this a lot in my friend circle. I have noticed this with my friends who are parents, and they set boundaries with the people in their lives who gift things, right? Whether they've said, I want less processed food, or trying to diminish the amount of plastic that my kids interact with, more sustainable clothing, having less clutter, like I don't want the junk, and having a hard time getting sort of the grandparents or other people in their lives to listen to them and sort of respect these wishes. How do you deal with that when gifting becomes a control issue?
Yeah, I think there's a difference between gifting because it brings someone joy and gifting as a control issue. And sometimes, of course, there's an overlap. But I think that gifting, like grandparent who wants to give your kid an ice cream or wants to give your kid like some ridiculous toy, that just brings them joy and your kid actually likes it. So the difference here is that Marina doesn't like it. So it's not like her mom is giving her something and she likes it. She doesn't actually like it and would not want to wear it. So sometimes I think that people can get too rigid with the grandparents. Like, it's okay that, and I went through this with my own parents and my own son, that at a certain point, it was like, you know what, when he's with the grandparents, that's what he does with the grandparents. That's okay. As long as it's not dangerous or something that, like, if he had an allergy or something like that. I think that there's some joy in making the recipient happy. And the difference here is the recipient is not happy. So it starts to feel like a control thing. This is so much about the mother. It's like 100% about the mother and 0% about Marina. And that imbalance is what she needs to set the boundary around.
I don't know. It sort of raised my little flags and said, is it possible that mom has a shopping addiction? Maybe shopping in her life is distracting mom from something else that she doesn't want to process or deal with. But like this shopping for Marina is doing something for her mom.
Look, it's hard. My son's about to go off to college and I'm already feeling it. So I think that it's definitely a change in the dynamic with your child when they launch into young adulthood. The question is, how do parents deal with it? So some parents don't know how to fill their time. They don't know how to kind of fill all of the stuff that they've been doing for 18 years. Even if they had a job, even if they were doing other things, you're still so mentally focused on what's going on with your child. So now your child is not taking up that space. So I think when she's shopping for her child, it helps her to think about, oh, I'm thinking about Marina. I'm connected to Marina. You know, I'm still being a mom to Marina. And I think that maybe this is outside of her awareness, that she doesn't realize that she's feeling this loss and that there are maybe healthier ways to stay connected to Marina. And then also figure out, what does this next chapter look like for me, given that Marina is going to become more and more independent, even though we will always still be connected.
I think that's really powerful. Lori, people tell you really heavy things a lot. I know you said you laugh some too, but it sounds like there's definitely some heavy stuff in there. Do you ever feel like you have no advice to give someone?
I feel like sometimes there are problems that people come in with that don't necessarily have a solution, but there's a different way to manage it. I feel like what my job is to help them figure out what is the best way to manage the situation that you're in if there's no way to find a solution to it. So I always feel like there's a way forward. I don't think I've really been in a situation with someone where I feel like there's no way forward. I mean, obviously, sometimes you're dealing with life circumstances that are really horrible, like the loss of a child or the loss of a partner, something like that. So there's no solution to that, but there's a way to really help the person understand that there is a way forward. And I think there's always a way forward, which is why sometimes coming to therapy is really helpful for people, because a lot of people will give you advice that's not helpful at all, where when you come to therapy, you can just really let it all hang out and talk about what's really hard and also let somebody hold the hope for you that something can be different.
Lori, I am definitely not in my first season of home improvement or design or helping people, but I am in my first season of this show. And so I'm wondering if you have any advice for me on continuing to field advice and help people going forward.
I think the best advice I have for you is to really learn how to listen. And learning how to listen isn't just the words that somebody is saying, but it's their body language, and it's kind of reading between the lines. And it's also asking them what they want in that moment. Sometimes people are just want to say, I just want to vent, or I just want you to tell me whether or not I'm crazy, or actually I do want your thoughts on what I can do differently, or here's my idea and I want to hear what you think about it, but honestly. And so if you ask people, what are you actually wanting from me? Then I can actually give it. So it's really about, how are you listening to someone? What are they wanting from you? And what can you realistically offer to them? And mostly it's about helping them to hear their own voice. I think at the end of the day, we all just need a space where that little voice inside of us is going to get more airtime.
Oof, so wise, Lori. Thank you so much for being with us today. And to our listeners, I want to thank you for listening. If you don't mind, give this a share with someone you think might enjoy or need this episode. And thank you for being a part of this community. If this resonated with you, hit subscribe and let's do it again. Thank you so much, Lori.
Thanks so much. Take care.